So I guess this is my second video that I'm doing. It's just random, but I wrote a poem and it's more along the lines of like people who get addicted to drugs and they kind of abandon their families, or because that's all they see is drugs because it takes over the mind. So this one I wrote, and it's personal experiences seeing things and seeing how it takes over people's lives. I'm wanting to focus more on the words and my appearance, so I'm barely going to show myself. So I'm just going to read that, and yeah. I haven't come up with a name for it yet because I just finished it, but this is my poem. He's a host with a name to distinguish. To channel a conversation, I thought he was English, breathing through his mouth while his nose is running. His paradise is doing flips off of rails, cunning. His wife's rings around his neck, but does he remember why? He's turned into the winter months before it even hit December. His begging, his faith, he's convinced in his own lies. But she knew when it came down to it, he wasn't going to compromise. She carried 4, but he barely held 1. Licorice were in his nose, but he forgot about the sun. The girls loved Daddy, but the women they became didn't. The stressors they just didn't understand it. Daddy loved the bars, and it started when he was 18 years old. Driving with that radio on, packing the white, waiting for it to be sold. His mind was already made up before his life started. High-fiving his friends, his family was only to be discarded. Children grow and learn from what they see. He wouldn't have cared if it repeated history. But there's a fine line between doing rails and skating off of one. I had my own element and my wheels. That was the only thing that was spun. So that one is something I just wrote. Again, regarding more on the lines of like drug use and people who get addicted to that kind of stuff. So, unfortunately, people have a tendency to lean towards that because, of course, it's going to alter the mind and is going to kind of bring you up to the state of mind where you're in like a euphoric state of mind. You're not going to have any worries, any cares. You feel superior. You feel like you're invincible. And it's because when you're down, when you're low, whether you're depressed or whether your life's, not doing well, and of course mental health can even contribute to that factor, as I've said before. So I believe the people that I knew did it because of that, because they couldn't handle their lives, or because some past experiences. So like there's various instances of somebody getting abused, or somebody having to deal with somebody else that they've seen do something, and they'll repeat that history, or they just don't know how to cope with things. So it's like, let's get high and forget about this, or let's try and erase the memories. Unfortunately, that's just not how it works. So drugs are definitely not a way to go about, but unfortunately people do. And once you start doing the heavy drugs and once you start getting into them, they change your mind. They change the person that you are. You become this empty shell. Hence why I said he's just a host, just a body, just a figure. And the name would be more too distinct. It's a last name. So like he's known for his last name, or he's known for his first name, and that's who he's known as. But you lose your character, you lose your soul. You don't have you're this person, this empty shell that is consumed by drugs. And for the channeling the conversation, what I mean by that is like when you're talking to people who have used, their brains are, I guess, depending on how far along they are or how far along they've been doing drugs for, sometimes you can't understand what they're saying, or they're so out of it that they just kind of speak gibberish, or they're speaking in tongue because they're blinded by this faith that they think that they believe in, but they do not, because it's all the drugs. Rails is more along the lines of like, of course, people do rails and cocaine. And when I'm referring to element, is also a skateboarding line. So, I mean, that kind of correlates with rails because you do, your skateboarding tricks off of those. I liked to skateboard when I was younger. Can't do it so much now just because of, careers and everything. You don't want to hurt yourself. But yeah, so I kind of just put myself into that poem along with somebody else that I knew and a couple other people that I've known who have gone through things. So yeah, when you have an addiction, you tend to just forget about everything else. That drug, that addiction is your main source. of attention or your main source of something to help relieve the stress, relieve the aggravation, the OCD, the anxieties, the depression, or if you have schizophrenia or something like that. There's people who use a lot of drugs for a lot of mental health problems, and unfortunately, once they get addicted to it, sometimes it makes the actual mental health problem worse, which, I mean, that's still something that people don't believe or some people don't know. It's a very controversial subject, and I think that's because people want to kind of believe in something that's going to solve or that will help them. But unfortunately, drugs do not do that. I mean, even psychotropic drugs too. Some of them help, some of them don't. Some of them turn you into a zombie. Some of them make you feel much better and turn your brain happy. Some of them just help with the serotonin levels and the dopamine and all that. So yeah, that is about it for this video. I don't want to go too much in depth with something, but if you have any questions or want to give me any tips or want me to speak about something else, don't be afraid to comment or let me know. But yeah, thank you for watching.